My name is Brenda Parker, and I'm one of the accompanists here at UUFF. I'm going to open our service today with a famous melody by Franz Schubert, which I've loved for decades. I hope it gives a sense of rest and sanctuary in this place for us today.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Fayetteville. My name is Stephanie Bentley, and I serve on the Chalice team, and I'm also the lead children's religious exploration teacher. So if you have questions about either of those, feel free to come see me after the service. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religious tradition, values freedom in religious thought and journey. We uphold the unity of our interconnections, connections with each other, to all of life, and to the precious universe which we are a part. We affirm the universality of love and hope as we journey together in community, and we welcome you, whoever you are at this moment, and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. For those of you joining us online, welcome. If you are new, please check out our website for more information, uufayetteville.org, and to sign up to receive the weekly email. For those of you visiting for the first time in person, you will find a visitor information card. It's the white one in the seat back in front of you. We would love for you to fill one out so we can get you on our email list and keep you informed of UUFF happenings. And later in our service, we will have a time where everyone is invited to come forward and drop a stone symbolizing their joys or concerns into our bowl of water. If you have a joy or a concern that you would like to share, we invite you to fill out one of the yellow cards you'll find on the seat back in front of you. There is a place on there to indicate if you want your joy or concern shared out loud, or if you would like for it to be confidential and shared only with leadership. If you are online, you may write your joys and concerns in the comments there at that time, but please note that those comments will be public. If anyone has a need for hearing assistance, our AV tech, David, who's back in the back, can help you with that. And children are always welcome in our service, but there is a staff nursery available downstairs if you would prefer. Please remember to silence your cell phones as we enter into our service. Today we're going to hear from UUFF friend Reverend John R. Johnson. John was ordained into the ministry in the Christian Church, also known as the Disciples of Christ, and later found his home in the Presbyterian Church of the USA. He served churches in Ohio, Oklahoma, and Missouri, and he and his wife Janice, who is going to light our chalice, have 2 sons and 5 grandchildren, all of whom live here in Arkansas. Janice and John enjoy reading, traveling, and quilting. And John also loves playing with his model train layout. Thank you for sharing with us today, John, and we really look forward to hearing your message.
Amid all the distractions in our lives, we take this moment to sit in reverence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all of those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love, and to give thanks for the gift of life itself. So let us open ourselves to the promise and the possibility of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, and of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on earth.
Let us join in the chalice lighting. Love is the spirit of this community, and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace,
to speak knowledge and truth, and to help one another. Thus do we covenant together.
Good morning. Our opening hymn today is Here We Have Gathered. It is hymn number 360 in the gray hymnal. If you have trouble seeing the screen, I'll give you a second so you can find it. And Ollie and I will lead. And please rise and embody your spirit as you're willing and able to sing with us.
Here A Sick Day for Amos McGee, written by Philip Steed and illustrated by Aaron E. Steed. Amos McGee was an early riser. Every morning when the alarm clock clanged, he swung his legs out of bed and swapped his pajamas for a fresh pressed uniform. He would wind his watch and set a pot of water to boil, saying to the sugar bowl, "A spoonful for my oatmeal, please, and 2 for my tea cup." It reminds me of my grandfather, because he always used to say, "You've got to talk to these things, Joe." And it was true. It helped. Belly full and ready for the workday, he'd amble out the door. Every day, Amos waited for the number 5 bus. "Next stop, City Zoo," the bus driver would call. 6 a.m., right on time, he'd reply. Amos had a lot to do at the zoo, but he always made time to visit his good friends. He would play chess with the elephant, who thought and thought before making a move. Sounds like me. Run races with the tortoise, who never, ever lost. Sit quietly with the penguin, who was very shy. Lend a handkerchief to the rhinoceros, who always had a runny nose. And at sunset, read stories to the owl, who was afraid of the dark. One day, Amos awoke with the sniffles and the sneezes and the chills. He swung his achy legs out of bed, curled them back again, and said, "Ugh, I don't think I'll be going to work today." Good self-care. Meanwhile at the zoo, the animals waited for their friend. The elephant arranged his ponds and polished his castles. The tortoise stretched his legs and limbered up. The penguin sat patiently all by himself. The rhinoceros worried that his allergies were worsening. The owl perched atop a tall stack of storybooks, scratching his head with concern. "Where is Amos?" the animals wondered. Later that day, very astute observation. Hooray, my good friends are here to take care of him, just like he does them. The elephant prepared a game of chess. Amos thought and thought before making a move. "I'm too tired to run races today," said Amos to the tortoise. "Let's play hide and seek instead." The tortoise hid inside his shell. Amos hid beneath the covers. Amos yawned. "I could use a nap." The penguin sat quietly, keeping Amos's feet warm. Achoo! Amos awoke with a sneeze. The rhinoceros was ready with a handkerchief. Karma. "I'm beginning to feel much better. Thank you," said Amos to his friends. He swung his legs out of bed. "Perhaps we'll share a pot of tea." Amos wound his alarm clock. "It's getting late," he said. "After all, we have a morning bus to catch." So Amos said goodnight to the elephant, and goodnight to the tortoise, and goodnight to the penguin, and goodnight to the rhinoceros, and goodnight to the owl, who, knowing that Amos was afraid of the dark, read a story aloud before turning out the light. We've got to take care of each other.
And along those lines of taking care of each other, it's time for our joys and concerns. As a community of people who care for each other, we share our joys and concerns. We invite you to share your ups and downs as you desire. You can come to the front and drop a stone for any joy or concern, shared or confidential, expressed or held in your heart. As you drop your stone, may you experience the spreading of love and support. If you filled out a card, you can bring it to me. On the card, please indicate whether your comment is confidential or to be shared. If you need to stay where you are, feel free to raise the card so someone can get it and bring it up here for you. And if you're attending virtually, you may write your joys or concerns in the comments at this time. You may come forward.
That's it.
We drop a stone for joys and concerns unspoken. We drop another for joys and concerns we will experience in the coming week. Let's have a brief moment of silence as we hold all these joys and concerns in our hearts. And now it's time for the offering. The important work of this fellowship is possible because of your generous contributions of time, talent, and treasure. Every contribution of every size is helpful and appreciated. And I believe this week we are doing Share the Plate for our Loose Change with Peace at Home, which is an amazing domestic violence shelter. They provide housing, case management for women and children who have experienced domestic violence. As we pass the offering baskets, we invite you to share financially. If you prefer, you could give at our website, by texting online, or by mailing checks to our office.
Well, you don't have to sit long for your joints to stiffen up when you get to be. After spending almost 40 years engaged in full-time ministry, I spent the last several years of my ministry serving as an interim minister, or what we sometimes refer to as pulpit supply preacher. And at one church I was serving in that capacity, I tried to explain to one of the church members what that meant. I said, just imagine that you have a missing window pane or a broken window pane, and you tack up an old piece of cardboard over it until you can get it replaced. Well, just think of me as that old piece of cardboard. And she said, oh no, Reverend Johnson, we all think you're a real pain. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning, and whether you think of me as an old piece of cardboard or a real pain, I just leave to your judgment. It seems the president of a large company was out walking through the warehouse one day to see how things were going out there. He found a young man sitting on a crate playing a game on his cell phone. And the president was a little irritated by this young man just sitting there, and so he said to the young man, how much do you make? The kid said, oh, I make about $300 a week. The president pulled out his billfold and said, in that case, here's $300 a week's pay. Now get out of here. You're fired. The young man took the money and left quickly. The president walked back to the office and asked his secretary, how long have we had that young man working here? And she said, well, he doesn't work here. He was just dropping off a package. Like most of you, all of you, I would imagine, I was taught to believe in the value of work. Many times I heard people in my dad's generation say things like, if you can't get the job you want, take the job you can get. And if someone gives you a job, work hard enough to deserve it. Many times I would hear it said in a tone of voice that some people might reserve for saying the Lord's Prayer, if you work hard, you will get ahead. No one ever really defined what it meant to get ahead or how you would know whether or not you had made it there. We were just expected to do it. Not to work and not to work hard was considered disgraceful. My older brother Bill and I and our sister Suzanne, who all, by the way, ended up in the ministry, were the first generation in our family to have the opportunity to go to college. And consequently, of course, we had a lot more choices open to us about what we would do with our lives. And consequently, a lot of people in our generation took longer to decide that than many of our ancestors could afford to take. And I'm sure that some of our elders didn't understand that. I recall a church member shaking his head one day and lamenting that one of his adult children not only did not have a job, but could not even decide what he wanted to do for a living. How could you work hard if you didn't even know what you wanted to do? Well, I remember a certain picture that hung on the wall at my grandmother Boyd's house while I was growing up. But it was only in later years that I learned a little about the history of that picture. The original was painted by the French artist Jean-Francois Millet, who lived in the 19th century. I'm sure that you've seen some of his paintings at least. Some of them hang in churches, one of the most famous of which is a painting entitled The Gleaners. It shows these peasants in the field, and they are all bent over gleaning the field after the harvest, trying to scratch out a living on the leftovers. Gleaning is mentioned several times in the Bible as a form of charity. When a landowner harvested his crops, he was not supposed to pick his field clean. And then he was required by Old Testament law to let any of his poor neighbors or the homeless or aliens, as Hebrew scripture refers to them, he was to allow them to come into his field and pick up whatever grain they could, still laying on the ground. It served as a sort of safety net for the poor. You may know the story of Ruth, gleaning in the field of her wealthy neighbor Boaz. Another well-known painting by Millet is entitled The Angelus, which shows peasants pausing in the field with their heads bowed in prayer while church bells are tolling in the distance. The Angelus was a prayer that was supposed to be prayed by the faithful at 6 a.m. in the morning, 12 noon, and 6 p.m. in the evening. Many of Millet's paintings were depictions of life in the lowest socioeconomic status in France in the mid-1800s. And in fact, many of his paintings were scorned by people in the upper classes because they thought Millet was trying to shame them for allowing people to live in poverty. But he considered these his people, and so he painted what he knew. And he painted with compassion. The picture my grandmother had was entitled The Man with the Hoe. It's a picture of a man pausing to rest in the field, leaning on his hoe. The man is obviously tired. His back is bent. His shoulders are stooped. This painting inspired the American poet Edwin Markham to write a poem about it. Bowed by the weight of centuries, he leans upon his hoe and gazes at the ground. The weariness of ages on his face, and on his back, the burden of the world. Who made him dead to rapture and despair? A thing that grieves not, yet never hopes, stolid and stunted, a brother to the ox. Well, I didn't connect the dots back then, but looking back later in life, when I think of that picture now, I think of my grandfather Boyd, who died a couple of years before I was born. I have seen the family pictures, what few there are of him, and even in his 40s and 50s, he looked like an old man. Like the nameless man in Millet's painting, he barely scratched out a living as a dirt farmer, trying to support his wife and 3 daughters, one of whom was my mother. And when he died, he left my grandmother to eke out a living all by herself for the next 37 years with no marketable skills and only an 8th grade education. My other grandfather, my grandfather Johnson, was a house painter and wallpaper hanger for most of his life. And both of these hardworking men were the sons of immigrants who came to this country with hardly anything except the clothes on their backs and their desire to make good. But if you could have asked them, is it true that if you work hard, you will get ahead? They and a lot of other people just like them would probably have said, oh, yes, it's true. And certainly compared to the generation that came before them, some of them did get ahead. But whether they did or didn't, it wore many of them out trying. That is why my heart goes out to those who are so desperate to get just a toehold in this country, and who are willing to do hard work and dirty work that often no one else is willing to do. I think of those poor people at the Texas border, risking life itself for some of the opportunities that some of us in this country take a little too for granted. I have sometimes wondered if my grandmother knew anything about that painting, or if there was some unconscious reason why she had it hanging on her wall, because she certainly spent a lot of her own life bent over with a hoe in a garden. It's a touching picture, and it was even to a kid. He looked so tired. He looked so absolutely weary. I really appreciated Brenda's comment after she looked at these paintings while preparing for the service this morning. She said, although we are not peasants struggling in fields, there's something in these paintings we can all identify with. Because it's not just farmers who feel that way, is it? What mother has not felt that way at times? Weary. At the end of a day spent chasing after rambunctious children and finally getting them tucked into bed for the fourth time, only to hear a little voice saying, "Mommy, I want a drink of water." Weary might be the only way to describe the couple who've been having the same argument for so long. They both know how it's going to end even before it begins. Weary might be the only way to describe the family who has spent long days and nights at the hospital, pacing the floor and sitting by the bedside, waiting for some good news, just a scrap of good news. Weary might be the only way to describe the working woman's experience, working at 2 full-time jobs, one at the office and the other waiting for her when she gets home. I can only imagine how weary our black brothers and sisters must feel, who were once considered as only 3/5 of a human being, and many of whom are still treated that way. I can only imagine how weary our neighbors must be in the LGBTQIA community, weary of being oppressed by laws and by elected officials who should be protecting them instead of kicking them to the curb. And on this Labor Day weekend, I think of people who go off to work at jobs every day that are so dangerous, they don't know for sure whether they'll even make it home alive at the end of the day. I mean, wouldn't that get to you after years on the job? We all get tired. We all have those moments of weariness. Maybe that's why grandmother had that picture on her wall. And maybe that's why her religion was so simple. Grandma was a staunch Baptist. But if you had tried to talk to her about the difference between a Baptist and a Unitarian, she would probably have scratched her head and wondered what in the world you were talking about. She didn't go to church to talk about theology. She just knew that when she went to church with her friends and sang, "Safe in the Arms of Jesus," she was right where she needed to be, a safe place where she could rest her tired old body and her tired old spirit. We all get tired. We all need a place to lay the burden down once in a while, because one thing we can be sure of is that we don't stop having those feelings of weariness just because we belong to a church or a synagogue or a temple or a fellowship or whatever we call it. There is a wonderful chemistry at work when we get together each week, for there are very few burdens in life that are not made a little lighter, and very few joys that are not made a little sweeter when they are shared with someone else. Someone tells about an old man and his family who were simple folks from the country, and he'd never been to a big city before. They had the good fortune to take a trip, and while they were checking into a nice hotel, there was an elevator in the lobby, and this old farmer had never seen an elevator before. And while he was standing there looking at it, a very elderly lady bent over and wrinkled, hobbled into the elevator, and the doors closed behind her. The lights above the door blinked a couple of times, and in a moment or two, the elevator doors opened up again, and a very young, very beautiful, and shapely lady stepped out. The old farmer's jaw dropped open, and he said to his son, "Junior, you wait right here. I'm going to fetch your ma and run her through that machine." In a sense, that's what being here should do for us and can do for us. It should change us. It may not take away the wrinkles, but being in fellowship, being in community with others can change us and make us better people. It can make us more loving. It can make us more forgiving, more accepting, more compassionate. And it can make us more beautiful, at least on the inside. For as William Barclay put it, love changes everything it touches. It makes heavy burdens into light ones, long hours short, and ordinary faces beautiful. Love makes houses into homes, picnics into bouquets, and wilted daisies into bouquets. So may it be.
Okay. This is hymn number 402. From You I Receive. We're going to sing it through 3 times. The melody is fairly simple, so if you don't catch it on the first time, don't worry, you have 2 more goes. Let's rise in body and spirit as you're willing and able and sing together. Beautiful. Thank you.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Well, aren't we lucky to have all these amazing folks among us who just speak so beautifully and can inspire, and thank you so much for that message. I really appreciate it.
And may I jump in here about water
Do it.
communion?
Do it.
Okay, friends, adults, please next week bring some water, 2 different types. I would like you to bring some water from either your travels, your house, your gym, wherever. We're all going to pour our water, a little bit of it, into the collective bowl, and we keep that for the next year, and then we use it to water plants, and we do all kinds of great things with it. Also, we're going to literally take it seriously. We call it water communion. Unitarians don't do communion, but we all need water. See, please also bring some water to drink next week together in fellowship together. We'll also have, of course, pitchers of water here if you forget. So can't wait to water communion next week, y'all.
Thank you, Renee. Now for some closing words from Reverend Johnson.
These closing words were inspired from the text of an ancient Franciscan blessing. May we be blessed with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that we may live from deep within our hearts. May we be blessed with anger at injustice, oppression, and the exploitation of others, so that we may work for justice, freedom, and peace. May we be blessed with tears to shed for those who suffer pain, rejection, hatred, hunger, and war, so that we may reach out to them in comfort and love. And may we be blessed with just enough foolishness to believe that we can make a difference in the world and do what others claim cannot be done. Amen.